So tonight we're going to talk about geometry and measurements and how that relates to architecture and mathematics. So just a little overview of architecture. Historically, it has been said that architecture was a part of mathematics, more specifically geometry. In the past, the two have been really hard to distinguish between. But as human beings, we've always been creating architecture, whether this has been to build shelter or to build visually pleasing designs. Euclid, a Greek mathematician, is considered the father of geometry and the first person to write the rules relating to geometry. Although this is true, it is considered that geometry and mathematics and measurement can be seen in the cathedrals of the medieval times. Although there is nothing written down, we can see it in the structure itself. Later, however, around 20 BC, a Roman architect, Marcus Vitiges, wrote the rules for architecture, relating to the proportions of how structures should be constructed. He recommended that the builders should use precise rations when constructing temples. For without symmetry and proportion, no temple can have a regular plan. Vitiges used the human body to base his symmetries off of. Architecture is a design process used both in the modern and ancient world, with every structure having purpose within the real world. Be this providing shelter or design. As explored briefly in the earlier paragraph, geometry, transformations, symmetry, and patterns are all used in architecture. So we're going to discuss a little bit about geometry in architecture. To investigate how geometry is used in architecture, one can look at the pyramids of Giza. The ancient Egyptians, to build the pyramids, they needed to have a basic understanding of angles and shapes. Concrete, however, was not invented in this age, therefore forcing them to use their knowledge of stones and cutting them into huge blocks and fitting it all together like a puzzle. It was their knowledge of triangles that led to the theory calculation of the pyramids. The measurements that they took and created were so accurate that these structures have lasted over 4,000 years, and in the modern day we accept them as being masterpieces of straight-line geometry. We can even relate architecture to the natural world and look at how bees have created their hives using the hexagon. This shape in the hive would have taken evolutions for bees to design. However, through the process, they have been able to create and produce a space-effective shelter and storage for their honey. So now we're going to look a little bit about symmetries and patterns in architecture. To explore the theories of transformations, symmetries, and patterns in architecture, we start to look at the ancient structures that are beautifully designed. If we focus on symmetry for a moment, it is defined by the reflection of shared forms, shapes, or angles across the central line called the axis. This creates a uniform look, a sense of rational and calm logic. This design and mathematical application was used and loved by the ancient Greeks. In saying that we find symmetry in the design of the building, we can expand that and explore how symmetry is used in the structure of the building. If we look at the Parthenon in Greece, we can see the structural symmetry created. This structure has a vertical axis, therefore creating reflective symmetry. We can also explore rotational symmetry in the medieval designs of cathedral windows. Their glass-stained windows allow the axes to be rotated at a constant rate, and all the design will stay symmetrical. Patterns were also used in the ancient Greek architecture, particularly on their floor design. If we look at the mosaic floor of a house built at Delos, we see the use of a hexagonal pattern. This pattern would also have a vertical and horizontal axes, creating lines of symmetries. Architecture can also be used for travel. In saying this, of course, architecture, you can't ride a building, but you can use buildings as points of designation. When I was overseas, when I was in Amsterdam, we used the Royal Palace of Amsterdam as our point of designation if anyone got lost. In this photo, you can see me standing beside a man who his job was to take photos with tourists, and he would get money from that, and that was very interesting. But yes, so if we ever got lost, we would always know to go back to the Royal Palace, because that was in the middle of Amsterdam Central, and Dam Square was there as well, and we would wait there to find each other. We do need to consider the environmental impact of architecture. It has had a huge impact on our environment. However, if we did not have it, the modern world would not be as advanced as it is. So to create buildings, we must have the space to do so. Therefore, to create this space, we have to clear the trees, which has caused climate change and destroyed the natural habitats of animals. Furthermore, the resources used to build structural designs can come, and mainly do come, from the modern natural world. Removing this, therefore, removes it from the earth, causing a shift in the climate and lessens the amount of carbon stored, whilst releasing carbon dioxide into the air. However, we as humans cannot live without architecture. We need shelter. However, a way that I think we could consider fixing this problem is if we started to design architecture to fit in with the natural environment. If we created or designed buildings that incorporated the trees and the natural environment, we could, create a win-win. In my study at ACU, I am studying to become a primary school teacher, so I do need to consider how this topic of architecture, especially geometry, measurement and mathematics, can improve and help me in my chosen career. Focusing on STEM, through using the study of architecture in relation to geometry, I am able to bring this resource into a mathematics, technological and engineering classroom, as architecture is a particular design, and it's a core idea, especially a part of these classrooms.